Okay, welcome to the Phi Life podcast. With me, I'm John Barban, and with me today is Brian Chung, and Brad Pilon is sort of AWOL for this week. We just couldn't catch up to get this week's Phi Life done, so that's why we're a bit late. So in this show, we're going to talk about, I guess, two things that sort of end up being getting down to the same thing, or at least the same story, but it kind of goes two different directions. We're gonna finish up talking about the concept of loose skin after dramatic weight loss. And we're going to also tackle the idea of belly fat and how people keep referring to belly fat as being, quote, stubborn. And I don't think people quite have the right conception of how to lose belly fat. And I think people think the fat stored around their abdomen is significantly different or physiologically different than the fat on the rest of their body. And so I think calling it stubborn actually is a bad thing, because over time I think people actually think it's got like a different set of characteristics than the rest of the fat. So we're going to be talking about both of those things. But Brian, you brought up something about you wanted to kind of close up the points about loose skin, and so I'll just kind of throw it over to you about that.
Yeah, I think it's all going to tie in ultimately in our conversation with the stubborn belly fat and also the whole idea of loose skin. It was really interesting because last week, after we had done Phi Life, I sat down and talked with a couple of my mentors who are, practicing plastic surgeons and have done a few of these massive weight loss patients, operated on rather. What's really interesting is that even with the bariatric patients, like the amount of weight you actually have to lose is quite enormous before you end up with genuine loose skin. And they're sort of talking on the level of 100 to 200 pounds, and we're talking about like a 400-pound person going down to 200 to 150 pounds, mm-hmm. Not somebody who's sort of 200-ish and dropping down to 150, right? In fact, you might, for somebody who's 400 pounds, losing 50 pounds doesn't even dent anything. You can't even tell that they've lost 50 pounds. And so I went online again and just sort of very casually Googled loose skin and weight loss on the internet and looked at a bunch of images. And what was really surprising, there were a few pictures of people who had genuine loose skin. They were massive weight loss patients, in some way, degree, shape, or form, whether they did it on their own or because they had surgery. But by and large, I wonder whether people's concept of loose skin is perhaps a little distorted for some reason, because most of the time when I looked online at the images, it wasn't loose skin, it was just more fat. And so I wonder what's going on, if what's going on is people have an idea of how much weight they want to lose, and they might say, "Oh, I want to lose 30 pounds for whatever reason," and they come up with a number, and however they come up with that number, I have no idea, but they come up with a number, they reach that number, and they look at themselves in the mirror, and they still have fat that they haven't lost because they really haven't gone down far enough in terms of their body fat percentage, and they think that they've lost it. They've lost all the fat they're going to need to lose because they're at that target weight. And they notice they still have a little bit of this sort of hanging paunch look to themselves. And they think, well, it can't possibly be fat because I've already lost all the weight that I really needed to lose. But I still look like I have this sort of flaccid stuff on me. And inside that flaccid stuff, I think, is just more fat. And they just haven't gone that far. They haven't gone far enough.
Yeah, that's interesting because lots of people, it's kind of like, I'm not exactly sure what the psychology is of for women, but for guys, you and I were talking about this, guys that just don't get how light they have to be really ripped. Like, I think every guy thinks he can be, I think every guy to a man thinks he's heavier than he actually is when he's all the way to his kind of leanest body shape. Like every guy I know who's ever been in a bodybuilding show was always lighter than he thought he was going to be when he got down to his total, like get down to his like ripped 6-pack level. And unless you're the type of guy who's naturally lean all the time, in which case you already know what weight you're going to be because you're already there. You're always there.